But last it came to an end and we're ready for a new week. Good morning, Uganda. We're here to take you through, your first section of the week as we look at Monday. But also a lot has been happening. We do know that Ebola is still on a high alert. And so far we have a cumulative death of 21 people, which is also from that experience. The medical workers in the Uganda Medical Association have asked Ministry of Health to actually put up a gazetted team to handle Ebola cases across the country. And of course, for me, I think that's a good move. It looks like most of these outbreaks that we have in the country really need a team to be on ground specifically for that. And it could also help because according to the association, they're saying, you know what, look, there are a lot of medical workers right now that are not employed, and they have the skills to handle such kind of outbreaks. So if we can gazette them and have them as a team to look after, people in certain hospitals specifically for that cause, I think it's a good move, and Ministry of Health should really look into having something like that so that we can minimize the death.
But also, I love the confidence that a number of Ugandans do have in the Ministry of Health, because if you've listened to a couple of them, they'll tell you, well, this has been it's our thing. We trust our ministry. They know how to handle it, and they will do justice even this time round. But hey, it doesn't mean you don't have to be careful and cautious. Felix, good morning.
Well, good morning, Philo.
How are you doing? I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm awesome. It's Monday.
Yes, it is.
Definitely, we're far away from the blues, I must say, and we're closer to the blacks. But anyway, it was much of a mixed weekend.
Yes.
Bit of happiness, bit of challenges. But one thing I know for a fact, issues of rainfall in this country, stagnation, they call it, are going to cost us a lot. The downpours I saw on Saturday,
yes,
they caused so many things, including spoiling my car. Personally, I had a terrible experience. I was stuck on the road for about 2 hours. So I lost, can you imagine? I lost a car too.
It happens.
Now I know the pain of,
yes,
directly, I know what it means, and I think we need to do something about our roads and our drainage system, honestly, for the government, the people in charge of this beautiful country. I think sometimes they need to first share in some of these experiences, man.
Yes.
Probably they'll know. Now I know what it means when it rains terribly.
They say you can only relate to something after you've experienced it. So now while you're talking about it, you're talking about it from the point of experience.
It's so painful. I think government and whoever is concerned, you need to work on the drainage in this city.
Yes.
And I know every time it rains, you know what our worry is? Somewhere in Kasese, Mubende, or probably what I'll be taking a boda man or a child or these things. But honestly, in the 21st century, rain should be an opportunity.
It shouldn't be a cause of worry among the netizens.
Now I think you know that I'm not crazy whenever I'm talking about authorities coming up to clear some of these drainage channels, because the flooding doesn't happen only in far places like you mentioned, Kasese or Duda or whatever, even in city centers.
Yeah, honestly.
And this is just like the center of it all. You have to make sure that you have businesses running. Rain is going to be here over and over. So all you can do is find ways of living in such a situation without struggling.
But honestly, and what I noticed when I was going through that problem, I took time to observe a lot where I was. One of the biggest causes of flooding is poor water harvesting. Honestly, I took time to look around all the buildings, and all of them were not having drainage, how to collect this water. The water that comes from people's houses is too much. But if any of these houses, probably when they are passing, I don't know, these physical planners and what, they should advise people to harvest this water. It will reduce the impact. But all the water that you see in the roads definitely is coming from someone's roof.
Well, I would believe that Robert is a farmer, and he's quite passionate about it. And I know he has an idea or two when it comes to the proper way to harvest water. Good morning, Robert.
A lovely morning to you, team, and of course our viewers. Well, there's a soap I used to enjoy watching on TV. Actually, there were two. One was called Beautiful But Unlucky, and the other was called The Rich Also Cry.
Okay.
Now the rich also cry. Now the rich also cry because when I see Felix away from the people of Waise, Katanga, Nkere, when it rains, you feel the pinch because they have to mark their basins, their saucepans in case water takes them. Someone can look at the phone number and call you. She may say PTO one. But now what is happening is that also the rich are now feeling the pain. And when it comes to them, then action is on the way.
Yes.
Then action is, so you can be sure that action is going to be taken. When Prado's V8s, Touarages get stuck in water and they are damaged and someone's going to spend. So get spoiled. What happened? Also that means someone from KCCA, the Namibian minister, concerned parties are now going to. Because you see this difference in classes. Some of the problems we talk about, others may not understand.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
But when they happen to them, then unfortunately we see action taking place.
So Robert, are you happy or sulking for me?
Well,
that tells it all.
I hope you're not bringing sadistic attitude on a Monday. No, Robert.
For the many poor that suffer, if the suffering of the rich is going to cause action, I stand to rejoice.
Yes.
Well, I talked about well, because percentage. You see how many. You know, most of the times we are deceived. Out of the 43 million Ugandans, how many of these are rich? How many of these stay in these posh areas where they first think of roads going to their places before thinking of the many that others use? But you talked about water harvesting. One of the things that I believe will help people, because most of the farmers depend on rainfall-fed agriculture, is water harvesting. But when you look at this water, the way it comes from the 7 hills of Kampala, sloping, the Felixes who want to sleep on top of hills and they remove all the maram, all the land cover because they want to see Kampala. They have gone on the lakes, they look for the lake view. Yeah, you people. So these are the problems. The poor cause less of these problems.
Yes.
The rich cause them for the poor.
You know what Robert is saying?
Yes.
I'm sorry, let me just say this. So, unfortunately, I think I was in the wrong place at the right time when it rained. When I told my wife, she's like, what? What do I'm like,
But it happens. It really, really happens.
And this is even when we talk about, I was hearing this story of the EU Parliament talking about our oil pipeline. Mollen can testify to this because she's an expert in that direction. Africa, we only bring 1% of these gases in the air. It's the other continents that have done us a disservice. So only us who contribute 1%. Now they are saying, okay, for you when it is your time, please don't do this. But for them, day by day, they are increasing new production here, there, and all that. So for me, I think I must say, let the rain come. We pray for the Lord's grace and mercy.
And protection.
But if it's going to cause the desired change we've been calling for and craving for, then let's all suffer. We shall have.
But also we also appreciate the rains because we have had, I think, about 4 consecutive failed rainy seasons, and this season seems like it is starting off quite well. We've had good performance across the country. I can tell you one thing, I've been getting feedback from some of the farmers that we gave this seasonal forecast, and they are saying, well, these rains are timely, they're able to, you know, do all their farming activities. It's a good start. And I think the last season we had from September last year did not actually perform equally well as it is now. So I think it's good news. There is bad news, of course, to the rich,
but
like
also many farmers, because the rains are too much. Also, most of the farmers have received, the banana plantations are down. Some of their grazing areas are soaked in water.
Yes.
Most of them, those that had beans, they are all in water. So it has become really, I think,
you know, last week there were people coming in from Bushenyi. There was a video going viral about the very, very strong hailstorms that were hitting people's plantations. It looked so devastating, and I don't think that is part of the farming that we want.
It does come with extreme events, and those are the extreme events that we actually always talk about even here on the show, because you do expect the rains to have that clear pattern. However, we have to acknowledge the fact that the climate has changed, and most of these, instead of being just normal wind, it's going to be strong wind taking some of the plantations down, or even the rains that come will now come with flooding or hailstones. So it's just the new factor that it's out of the ordinary, and you just have to you know, pray that it doesn't happen to your farm. But otherwise, it's sad that we still continue to see extreme weather events.
No one even said sorry to me, but what kind of people am I working
Well,
Because
we'll deliver our sorry to you in a very special way. So, anyway, there is a lot happening around Kampala, in the outskirts, in different regions of the country. And I mean, you have to know what's happening around you, even outside the country. When you get to the East African region, there is quite a lot that is happening over there. For example, we know that certainly in Tanzania, we've not only actually in Tanzania, on the entire East African bloc, the issue of human trafficking has become quite endemic, I must say, and Tanzania has decided to step up and they come out to say that whoever is caught as a culprit when it comes to serial human trafficking, you stand to go for life imprisonment, or you could actually pay a fine between 100 million Tanzanian shillings to about 200 Tanzanian million shillings. That's about $46,000 to $86,000. So anybody who is actively involved in this and you are actually taken in by the authorities, well, you're either behind the bars for the rest of your life, or you're going to have to cough out that amount of money. And I believe this is something that we should all to be coping as other East African regions, because human trafficking has become an endemic over here. We've had very many complaints coming in from different people, different families. It's quite very sad and disheartening. Well, we know that our authorities are trying to do something to make sure that they put a cap on this evil deed. Well, time for us to get into some of these stories, both local and international, starting off with you, Robert.
Well, over the weekend, government fulfilled its promise of giving LC's bicycles, and these were delivered by Honorable Amsumabua, who happens to be, that is, a member of parliament for Ajuri, and also government chief whip. Government chief whip, also Ajuri county member of parliament, Dennis Hamson Mobua, has challenged local council chairpersons who received bicycles from government to ensure effective delivery of government programs. He was delivering 794 bicycles for Albertong district. He said the bicycles, which are procured by government, are meant to ease mobility of LCs in monitoring of government programs. From all villages in Albertong district, they all came to receive their bicycles. It was the president's pledge to give all local councils 1 and 3 bicycles for the programs. Now, Betong district, 794 bikes were displayed at the district headquarters, and LCs depict bicycles of their choice. The chairperson, Obanga Nyanga village, Mos Odongor, explained that the bike will address their perennial challenges of mobility within the community. Santa Auma, who also received a new bike, said now their transport is sorted. Government should consider increasing their pay. A total of 794 bicycles were handed over by government chief whip, also Ajuri County MP Dennis Amsomobua, who explained that the bicycles should ease movement and should serve the purpose they have been given to the LC1.
One of the cultural leaders of Lango community, Dr. Michael Odong, has appealed to community vigilance against Ebola virus. Now, he was addressing a cultural event in Lira City. He did also explain that cross-border movements by residents should be avoided to de-escalate Ebola spread. The Lango cultural leader, Dr. Michael Odong, has also asked the cultural meeting in Lira City to be allowed to avoid any contact with travelers who might be conveyors of the Ebola virus. Now, Odong urged Ugandans to place emphasis on health and sanitation, environmental protection, shielding parish development model resources against graft, and the event was also addressed by the Prime Minister, Lango Culture Institution, George Ogwang. Now, the head of Okuruku core clan Jorem Acheng also explained that Lango cultural institutions play a big role in community development, mainly on issues around health and welfare.
And we now move to wildlife and human conflict, where residents living around Buwindi Impenetrable National Park in Ruhija Town Council, Rwanda District, and those in Buhoma Town Council, Kanungu District, are concerned about wild animals that invade their communities and destroy crops. Residents are worried of contracting deadly diseases like Ebola that can easily be spread between humans and animals. All is not well with communities neighboring wildlife sanctuaries. In Kanungu District, there is a loud complaint of wild animals attacking communities, damaging property, and sometimes killing residents. Mosei Mugaya Salute, who lives near Windy National Park, says he resorted to farming with now 6 acres of coffee, but wildlife often damages his garden. Most communities around Windy National Park abandoned illegal poaching and resorted to some other economic activities. They remain disgruntled with some of the wild animals that invade their crops. Residents have reached relevant authorities for interventions, but all in vain. Residents are fearing that they might contract Ebola because it's transmitted by animals. This prompted a public health organization to carry out sensitization around different communities. Village health and conservation teams have been put in place to sensitize community members.
Now, the Uganda National Association of Community and Occupational Health members have embarked on a campaign against mercury use in gold processing. The exercise, with the intention to save the health of miners, Uganda National Association of Community and Occupational Health have held a campaign in Tira Mining, Busia District to dissuade miners from applying mercury in gold extraction. The exercise did also handle with support from Dialogos and signed a memorandum of understanding with Busitema University to conduct research, train the miners and produce new ideas and innovations into the mining sector. The executive director of this association, Dr. Deogracius Kaheru Sechimpi, highlighted challenges that are faced by these particular people amidst execution of their job.
Now, elsewhere, looking at Italy's far-right set to win election exiting the polls, the far-right leader Giorgia Meloni has claimed victory in Italy's election and is on course to become the country's first female prime minister. Ms. Meloni is widely expected to form Italy's most right-wing government since World War II. That will alarm much of Europe, as Italy is the EU's third biggest economy. However, speaking after the vote, Ms. Meloni said her Brother of Italy party would govern for everyone and would not betray people's trust. Italians have sent a clear message in favor of a right-wing government led by Brothers of Italy, she told reporters in Rome. She's predicted to win between 22 to 26% of the vote, says a Rai exit poll ahead of her closest rival Enrico Letta from the centre-left. That dominance was underlined by the first projection from Rai, which gave her more than a quarter of the vote for the Senate. Projections are based on concrete results. Italians also vote for the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies. Ms. Meloni's right-wing alliance, which also includes Matteo Salvini's far-right league and former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi's centre-right Forza Italia, now looks to have control of both houses with a projected 42.2% of the Senate vote. Now, but the decision on who becomes Italy's next leader is up to the president, not Giorgia Meloni, and that will take time. Although she has worked hard to soften her image, emphasizing her support for Ukraine and diluting anti-EU rhetoric, she leads a party rooted in a post-war movement that rose out of dictator Benito Mussolini's fascists. The United States has warned of catastrophic consequences if Moscow were to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine after Russia's foreign minister said regions holding widely criticized referendums would get full protection if annexed by Moscow. Votes in 4 eastern Ukrainian regions aimed at annexing territory Russia has since its invasion in February were staged the third day on Sunday. The Russian party could move to formalize the annexed days by incorporating the 4 areas of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, Russia. Moscow could try attempts to retake them as attacks on Russia itself. A warning to annexations raised the risk of a direct military confrontation alliance as Western arms are being used by Ukrainian troops. National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan said on Sunday that decisively to any Russian use of nuclear weapons against Ukraine had spelled out to Moscow the catastrophic consequences it would face. If Russia crosses this line, there will be catastrophic consequences for the country. The United States will respond decisively, Sullivan told several media outlets the press news program.
Africa's Titanic that is remembering Senegal's Gola tragedy. Now on 26th of September 2002, the Jola, a government-owned Senegalese ferry, capsized off the coast of Gambia, killing over 1,800 people. There were just 64 survivors. It is the second worst non-wartime maritime disaster in history, taking the lives of more than the infamous Titanic. 20 years on, the BBC investigates why this tragedy occurred and tells the harrowing, heartwarming stories of survivors and families who continue to call for the wreckage to be raised from the seabed. The Jola disaster had multiple causes, and the ship, managed by the Senegalese Navy, was in bad condition. It was overloaded with 4 times more passengers than the maximum allowed. The vehicles in the hold were also not secured, and the captain of the ferry, who himself died, no doubt made a navigation error. Families of the victims have long tried to find out the truth about what happened. Some filed a complaint against the Senegalese government for negligence, but the case was closed in 2003. The legal proceedings also began here in France, where several of the victims hailed from, but they did not succeed. 20 years on, victims' families continue their fight to ensure that the Jola disaster is not forgotten. In particular, they want the wreck of the ship to be hauled up from the seabed in order to be able to start grieving properly. In the climate news, Canada sends troops to help clear Hurricane Fiona's devastation. Now, the Canadian military has been mobilized after Hurricane Fiona left hundreds of thousands of people in Atlantic Canada without power, and officials try to assess the scope of devastation. After the surging north from Caribbean, Fiona came ashore before dawn on Saturday as a post-tropical cyclone battering Canada's region of Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland and Quebec, with hurricane-strength winds, heavy rains and huge waves. Now, Defense Minister Anita Arnold said Canadian troops would help remove fallen trees throughout the eastern Canada, restoring transport links and do whatever else is required for as long as it takes. Now, she did not specify the number of troops that would be deployed. Hurricane Fiona was responsible for at least 5 deaths in the Caribbean, while Canada's authorities have not confirmed deaths. They have been searching for missing women in the hardest hit town of the Channel Port aux Basques of the southern coast of Newfoundland. She's likely washed away to the sea, but they haven't found and been able to confirm that, said Jolene Galanda, a spokesperson for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Well, it is still Monday and it is Good Morning Uganda. We are still with you all the way. We'll be going in for quite an inspiration song, and when we get back, definitely we'll be sharing a poll question on how you can also be part of it and what kind of engagement you can have with us this morning. And not forgetting the newsreel, where we'll be having a topical discussion, something that is closer to very many Ugandan hearts when it comes to children dropping out of school. We'll be back shortly after this break.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Quite endemic, I must say, and Tanzania has decided to step up, and they come out to say that whoever is caught as a culprit when it comes to serial human trafficking, you stand to go for life imprisonment, or you could actually pay a fine between 100 million Tanzanian shillings to about 200 Tanzanian million shillings. That's about 46,000 US dollars to 86,000 US dollars. So anybody who is actively involved in this and you are actually taken in by the authorities, well, you're either behind the bars for the rest of your life, or you're going to have to cough out that amount of money. And I believe this is something that we should all to be copying as other East African regions, because human trafficking has become an endemic over here. We've had very many complaints coming in from different people, different families. It's quite very sad and disheartening. Well, we know that our authorities are trying to do something to make sure that they put a cap on this evil deed. Well, time for us to get into some of these stories, both local and international, starting off with you, Robert.
Well, over the weekend, government fulfilled its promise of giving LC's bicycles, and these were delivered by Honorable Amsumabua, who happens to be, that is, a member of parliament for Ajuri, and also government chief whip. Government chief whip, also Ajuri County member of parliament, Dennis Hamson Mobua, has challenged local council chairpersons who received bicycles from government to ensure effective delivery of government programs. He was delivering 794 bicycles for Albertong district. He said the bicycles, which are procured by government, are meant to ease mobility of LCs in monitoring of government programs. From all villages in Albertong district, they all came to receive their bicycles. It was the president's pledge to give all local councils 1 and 3 bicycles for their programs. Now, Betong district, 794 bikes were displayed at the district headquarters, and LCs picked their bicycles of their choice. The chairperson, Obanga Nyanga village, Mos Odongor, explained that the bike will address their perennial challenges of mobility within the community. Santa Auma, who also received a new bike, said now their transport is sorted. Government should consider increasing their pay. A total of 794 bicycles were handed over by government chief whip, also Ajuri County MP Dennis Samson Mobua, who explained that the bicycles should ease movement and should serve the purpose they have been given to the LC1.
One of the cultural leaders of Lango community, Dr. Michael Odong, has appealed to community vigilance against Ebola virus. Now, he was addressing a cultural event in Lira City. He did also explain that cross-border movements by residents should be avoided to de-escalate Ebola spread. The Lango cultural leader, Dr. Michael Odong, has also asked the cultural meeting in Lira City to be allowed to avoid any contact with travelers who might be conveyors of the Ebola virus. Now, Odong urged Ugandans to place emphasis on health and sanitation, environmental protection, shielding parish development model resources against graft, and the event was also addressed by the Prime Minister, Lango Culture Institution, George Ogwang. Now, the head of Okuruku Koa clan, Jorem Acheng, also explained that Lango cultural institutions play a big role in community development, mainly on issues around health and welfare.
And we now move to wildlife and human conflict. where residents living around Buwindi Impenetrable National Park in Ruhija Town Council, Rwanda District, and those in Buhoma Town Council, Kanungu District, are concerned about wild animals that invade their communities and destroy crops. Residents are worried of contracting deadly diseases like Ebola that can easily be spread between humans and animals. All is not well with communities neighboring wildlife sanctuaries. In Kanungu District, there is a loud complaint of wild animals attacking communities, damaging property, and sometimes killing residents. Mzee Mugaya Salute, who lives near Windy National Park, says he resorted to farming with now 6 acres of coffee, but wildlife often damages his garden. Most communities around Windy National Park abandoned illegal poaching and resorted to some other economic activities. They remain disgruntled with some of the wild animals that invade their crops. Residents have reached relevant authorities for interventions, but all in vain. Residents are fearing that they might contract Ebola because it's transmitted by animals. This prompted a public health organization to carry out sensitization around different communities. Village health and conservation teams have been put in place to sensitize community members.
Now, the Uganda National Association of Community and Occupational Health members have embarked on a campaign against mercury use in gold processing. The exercise, with the intention to save the health of miners, Uganda National Association of Community and Occupational Health have held a campaign in Tira Mining, Busia District to dissuade miners from applying mercury in gold extraction. The exercise did also handle with support from Dialogos and signed a memorandum of understanding with Busitema University to conduct research, train the miners and produce new ideas and innovations into the mining sector. The executive director of this association, Dr. Deogracius Kaheru Sechimpi, highlighted challenges that are faced by these particular people amidst execution of their job.
Now, elsewhere, looking at Italy's far-right set to win election exiting the polls, the far-right leader Giorgia Meloni has claimed victory in Italy's election and is on course to become the country's first female prime minister. Ms. Meloni is widely expected to form Italy's most right-wing government since World War II. That will alarm much of Europe, as Italy is the EU's third biggest economy. However, speaking after the vote, Ms. Meloni...
Best seat in the house this new football season. Get a GoCoder with 1 month of GoTV value for only 25,000 Uganda shillings and enjoy non-stop football. GoTV Uganda. Love it.
Airtel is giving you bigger data bundles for the same price. Dial star 175 hash to choose from our range of bigger Chillax bundles that don't expire and stay connected longer to loved ones. Airtel, the smartphone network.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Five minutes after 7 a.m., you're watching Good Morning Uganda, and this is the Good Morning Uganda Newsreel segment. My name is Philomena Mastiko, and I am with the gentlemen, Felix and Robert over here. But before we get into the conversation this morning, of course, concernment about the number of school dropouts here in Uganda and how it is really soaring exponentially, maybe we also just need to remind our viewers about Ebola. Now we clearly see that conversations are getting in deep, and Ministry of Health has come out to warn, because right now as we stand, we have a cumulative number of about 31 both confirmed and suspected victims. But the people people who have really succumbed to it, the number actually stands at about 19. So what should you do to make sure that you avoid it, or we can try as much? The biggest part here for you to play is to make sure that you prevent it, because if you're not a medical personnel, clearly there is nothing you can do about it. But Ebola is a severe and often deadly disease that can be prevented by doing a number of the things I'm just about to talk about. Avoid direct contact with body fluids from any person or animal suspected of being infected with Ebola, or, that has been infected with Ebola. And if you must handle a patient suspected to be suffering from Ebola, make sure that you wear protective material. We are talking about things like gloves and masks. So if you thought you're done with the masks, I'm afraid we are still a bit far away from that. Now, persons who are suspected to have died from Ebola must be buried immediately, and this should be done by a trained burial team to prevent the spread of Ebola. Much as they could be your family members, it's not really it's not a given that you should be the one to bury them. And in case you find a person suspected to be infected with Ebola, wash your hands thoroughly with soap and clean water. The key word here, of course, being suspect. Now, it doesn't have to be confirmed, but as long as you suspect it, make sure that you wash your hands. And talking about the transmission of Ebola, again, it is spread through direct contact with a number of things. Body fluids such as blood, saliva, fecal matter, vomit, urine, and sweat of an infected person. Now, soiled clothing of an infected person could actually also be one way that virus could be transmitted, and sterilized equipment used by an infected person definitely is another way that this virus could be transmitted. Handling wildlife, whether alive or dead, you don't know what could have caused the death of any of these animals, so please keep away from all this. At the end of the day, we want Ugandans to be healthy and to avoid all transmissions or infections for as long as you can. The thing is, do your part, and also the people in authority will do their part. We need to come together to fight the virus since it is already here. And Ministry of Health keeps bringing the updates, so make sure that you acquaint yourself with all this information to make sure you are at par concerning Ebola and its outbreak in the country. Well, back to our conversation this morning about school dropouts and how the number has actually grown exponentially in the country. Well, this is disheartening, first of all, I must say, for a country. You know what they say when it comes to education, for an economy, we need education, and this is a right to everyone. But also we know that there are very many major reasons as to why we have witnessed a number of school dropouts. Of course, recently, we know that the number has grown really, really high because of COVID-19. Now, you would say COVID-19 as a virus may not have had a serious effect, but the aftermath of this outbreak is majorly one of the reasons we are seeing our numbers grow high. Girls, boys, I must say that different stories are being told by different schools, and we're seeing quite a number. We are seeing a difference, and schools have also registered quite lower numbers of turn-ups. Term by term, we have a number of children going low. But maybe to get into it, Robert, what could be some of the major reasons apart from COVID-19? Maybe we could have, we have sidelined some of these reasons, because right now we are using as COVID-19. But I also want to believe that there are some other reasons, mainly that we could have turned a blind eye to. And if we don't talk about it, if we do not know about it, there is no way our viewers will know about it. So what are some of these other reasons we have sidelined, and yet they are playing quite a major role in increasing the number of school dropouts?
First, we must understand that when you talk about school dropout, this is a very serious issue to our nation. Among other things we must discuss at parliamentary level, at cabinet level, at village level, local councils, we must interest ourselves on why this is a problem. Research shows that 45%, that is where we stand in terms of school dropouts. There's a research that was carried out by the ministry itself and indicated that at entry of primary 1, you have 1 million pupils. At P7, you remain with 600,000. At senior 4, you remain with 300,000. When it comes to senior 6, you have 100,000. Now, that means a huge percentage. And the same research indicated that by P7, we out of the 1 million, only 24,000 complete. So what does that mean? That we are losing so many children along the way in the education cycle. Now, that was even before COVID-19, but like my sister said here, COVID-19 was an escalator, or it acted as a catalyst to this issue. I was meeting with one of the heads of a school, and there was a parents-teachers meeting, and they called the parents because they were concerned not only for the numbers of dropout, but even those that had paid school fees. He said, look, almost all the classes I have, only half have paid school fees. How do I continue running this school? When half of each class of four streams, only half have paid. I have to feed them, I have to pay the teachers, I have to transport them. So he said this was a situation before COVID. But you asked what are some of the reasons that contribute to this? One, the cost of education in our country. Human rights advocates, members of the legal fraternity, among others, always bring up this word that education is a fundamental human right, which means it should be easily affordable, available to everybody in this country. But unfortunately, it's not the case. Education is, if there is anything expensive, education is among that. And this was worsened with the commercialization, where now you have, where government let it to be that private schools are more than government schools. There are places you may go to and there is no government school. Over the weekend I visited some island, just very near here, where you get there, you get on a boat, then you cruise. But there wasn't any government school. You find private schools. So what does this mean? That these people come in the education sector to make money.
Yes.
To make profits. Their sole purpose may not be to educate. Because when you look at the background of education in this school, we had the church or religious faith-based schools that were brought by the missionaries. The Muslims also came in, and they built to educate people that were going to further take the gospel, further help our colonial masters in terms of administration. That is why you see that our education system is tailored to creating more job seekers than job creators, because these were going to help our colonial masters administrate their authority. Then we had community schools where the educated Felixes, the Kirabo, the Philomena, coming from our community would say no.
Yes.
We need people to be educated. Then we would set up a school. And you remember those schools, so community, Chibuya Community School, meaning it was a community-based school. Then government took up some of these church schools and all that. Now there came in the private schools. Kirabo knows I begin with my 3 rooms. I get pupils, I go to the bank, I get a loan. In 10 years, man, I'm driving the big wheels because education. So that made education expensive. And to make what matters worse, where the government education at no way could it bring same products as the private schools are doing.
Yes.
Because if a person knew that, well, if I can't afford a private school, government school I can equally get the same service and better. But the challenge here is that is impossible. Then making matters worse, even in government schools now, there is a fee to pay. Still it puts people out. So education in our country is one of the expensive things. That means with the economic hardships, parents are not going to be able to take their children to school.
Okay.
But also you must understand that another thing with our education is, what does it offer? COVID-19, children left school and began bricklaying. They went on Felix's site. They began and now they have learned skills. You know?
Yes.
They went on Kirabo's farm. They now learned. They went on, so they found alternatives that were giving them money.
They've been exposed to
Yes.
some of these things that they
I want to tell you there is an issue I was handling. It is in family. This young boy, due to COVID-19, he went and learned welding. We were 2 years. So his father said, instead of sitting here, go and learn welding. This guy, his hands on. he learned welding so very well. Now the father, who happens to be doing some job but not earning very well, this young boy is earning more than the father was earning. So they are telling him, go back and study. The boy is saying, I'm not going back. In 2 years, I've bought a plot. I now have clients every time. I'm in Bali, I'm welding here. We even registered a company. He doesn't want to go back because with his little understanding, he's seeing that he's studying to get a job. He's gotten a job, senior 4, he knows how to read and write. He knows how to count. He thinks he has made it. Because he will ask you, my friends who are still in the education cycle, you leave P7, there is nothing you can do. 4 years, there is nothing you can do. Now, it is hard to explain to some of these young children reason they should go back to school when they see a university graduate coming back home, waking up to wash their dad's car, or moving around 2 years of job seeking. So where the value of our education is not physically seen, this also is one of the ways why you find that many of our children are dropping out of school because they are seeing alternatives. These are people who are employing graduates. So it becomes a bit tricky to ensure that you make these people stay in school. Of course, with also religious, culture, marrying off young girls and all that, but these are the key measures: economic hardships and education that has failed to create value to our children, that they see other alternatives as sources. A senior 4 earning better than the father, being able to, and for you telling him go back and study. So it becomes very complicated.
Well, we're talking about the worrying cases of school dropouts in Uganda. Now, aside from COVID-19, one of the major issues we have really discovered right now, Felix, is that the expensive education system, and it's not just only in Uganda, everywhere. And there is one common narrative that people have: if education is not expensive, then the value may not be realized. Okay, and I mean, you know that many Ugandans believe in this. A parent would ordinarily and willingly pay quite lots of money to a school to have their children go out. But again, we know that we all don't stand on the same economic class. There are people who will not afford that. But then also, and one thing I would really love to hear you talk about is there a possibility of you having good education without it being expensive? Must education be expensive for people to get it and also for it to add value to you? Otherwise, I think if it was like that, then we would have quite a reduced number in the school dropouts. So is there a possibility of that happening?
Well, it used to be.
Back in the day?
Yes. I don't know, for some of us who went to schools like Shimoni, they weren't quite expensive, but the quality of education was high up there.
Yes.
The Buganda roads, the Nakase roads, the Bat Valleys, those government schools that have consistently stayed relevant. And whatever jargon they use, whatever, I think they need to share that with very many other schools.
Today they have also become expensive because now in Nakasero, I know a child will cost about 200,000. And they will tell you it is the alternative if you're in Kampala.
Because I remember we used to pay about 60 or 50 at Shiboni, or 30, something like that.
50,000 shillings.
Yeah, about that. When it's called what? The free thing.
Universal Primary Education.
Yeah, UP had come, yeah. We used to pay about 30 or 50, around that amount. And the quality, as I told you some time ago, that we used to study with ministers' children. At least my class had a child for a minister. We used to rub shoulders, you can imagine. But, you know, and we have been all, this is our problem, all of us. When a report comes out, or when you see in the papers or elsewhere a report talking about high dropout, we should be worried. Just so we know as a country, not just as people who have failed to take children to school. One of the biggest challenges of growing civilities in the world, by the way, and this challenge has been evident in countries like Colombia, the Brazils of this world, Uruguay, Argentina. In Africa, you look at countries like South Africa, Lesotho, Sierra Leone. One of the biggest problems that these countries are facing, even today, because some of these countries like South Africa is quite a modern country and grown, but their biggest challenge up till today is the high levels of criminality. The gun violence, people stabbing, gangs and what. But the true cause of this is the social class imbalance. And what creates this is some of this. once you create a huge gap of social imbalance, which is what we are doing. When you talk about dropouts, school dropouts, some people may take it lightly and think, you know, these are kids for the poor, or probably they are kids for those. Some people even try to say that people just don't want to pay school fees. Can you imagine?
They choose not to. It's intentional.
Yeah, actually, I like the word that people think that it's a choice. But today, what we are doing, and this should go straight to the people who are in charge of education in this country, or people who are in charge of government, you should be most worried that you can never sleep. And I think, if I may pick the words of the current permanent secretary for Ministry of Finance. One time I think he was giving an address, I think at the Prime Minister's office, and he talked about that the rich can't sleep if the poor are hungry. This social imbalance we are creating. You see, not that our education is the best or fine, but it creates a level of civility. There are things you may not find a senior 6 graduate do. Yet it is easier for them to do those things if they hadn't gotten the opportunity to rub shoulders in terms of academics. The lack, and for me this is why I think dropouts are increasing today. As a country, we lack a consolidated approach to academics. We have let education be a pito grab. Like, if you can grab something for your own family, for your own children, for your own relatives, go ahead. For those who don't have the strength to fight, to get into the entanglement and fight for something to grab, they're definitely not going to. The same has been worsened by the existence of a great socio-economic imbalance, that even for the government efforts, the small or the few government efforts, they are not directly accessible. They are not directly available. As Robert said, what ought to be available, and by availability I mean accessible and almost affordable, is actually not. Programs like UPE, I think USE also now, were some of the greatest remedies we should have had in terms of education. Whatever happened, God knows. But government, and I'll tell you, people keep on saying that there's no money, there's no money. But do you know how that is applicable? There's always no money if something is not priority. Just like if someone keeps on telling you, but you know I'm busy. Man, just know that person is not interested in you. It's just a polite way of saying we are not interested, honestly.
Yes.
This whole thing consistently saying there is no money. It's a simple statement to whoever is interested in education in this country that these people who say this are not interested in education to be a national issue. When there's interest in something, you've seen many times government going to get a supplementary budget. At the click of a finger. And I think one of the businesses that will be discussed probably before end of year in Parliament will be increase of their salaries.
Yes.
And probably allowances.
I believe that was even already handled, my brother.
Okay. I probably am behind the news.
Yes.
Yeah, it was already handled.
So, and not attacking anyone in particular, but I'm just trying to bring to life the fact that this should be a common interest for all of us.
Yes.
When do we as Parliament sit to question why are we having high dropouts? How do we support these children? Philo, 15 years from today, let me tell you, the biggest lethal criminal gangs in Kampala, none of those members, and for some of people who do research and who love to read news or to some of these behind stories, none of them is above the age of 35, members of these gangs. Honestly, you can't find
they're actually young adults.
Yeah, you can't find an age mate of Kirabo.
No, let me just
yes.
As Felix is speaking, sorry to interject, today morning, at around 3, my vice chairperson in Sedeko gave me a call. I was sleeping and I was shocked. I was, your phone is ringing. I said, who is calling me at 3? And you know what had happened? He told me, help us call police. Our neighbor has been attacked by panga wielding young boys. That is the
These
one.
guys are
young boys.
14, 15, but honestly, these
14,
kids should be in
like
school.
you said. And the police came, but they had robbed almost everything. They just left a jerrycan. They want to bring a sniffer dog. But can you imagine? 3 a.m. This is today.
Now,
it is being
20
handled
years
by
ago,
Katwe police.
honestly, 15,
Right
20
now.
years ago, these kids are supposed to
Not.
be in school.
Yes.
Because it is school time. But they are killing people. They killed one of our employees along Rubaga Road. This boy is from Kisenyi. We had an Indian guy dead. And so many stories. You saw, I think, a lecturer in Mobs was. Now, if these things are not yet worrying Parliament, not worrying the executive, the judiciary, if these people are not worried, I don't know if we have to pray that these things come close to them. I don't know.
Because now the question is, if the people in authority are, they're just paying
They don't seem to be
deaf
worried.
yeah, because they know if my children are in school, they're doing quite
Abroad,
well. Actually, most of them, we know that they're not in the country. They'll probably do primary level right here in Uganda, and the next minute they're out of the country. But how do we now get to bridge that gap? Because now we see the people who would be advocating for a balanced education system, people who would be calling for prioritizing the education system, are the same people who seem to be quite far a bit from the reality, because they're doing well, they're thinking on an individual basis. So how do we get to bridge that? How do we get them to be concerned about what's happening in the country? Because I mean, when a child really drops out of school and they decide to start making money, whether it is quite in a straight way or in a questionable way, they won't care. All they're getting is money. But how do we get the people who are supposed to be concerned about this to actually get concerned?
Philo, that is a bit tricky, but I think for me I'll answer it this way. That first and foremost, we shall talk, and we shall talk. That is called, we shall be activists, we shall push for this. But also we must ensure that local communities can cause this pressure. It must be bottom up, not up, bottom approach.
Yes.
How? That people, if they decide, if all Ugandans accept and view this as a cancer eating our generation, their time is going to come, leave alone this time that they are stealing your car while you're in traffic jam, they are taking spare parts. That government will understand. Yes, you're driving in traffic jam. And someone is moving with your side mirror.
Nigga doesn't even run.
Yes, someone's moving
they will
with
just
your
walk out and you will look at them, you'll see them,
Look
but
at
you
the
won't do
guy.
anything.
The guy is like
Confidently.
This is like on a Wednesday afternoon.
The guy is like 12.
And he has
Yes.
taken what he has taken. So, where we think of installing cameras, having more police to police, and this is more bills, if they can understand that criminality, there is a very big relationship between school dropout and criminality in this country. Because one of the things our government understands very well is when it comes to issues of security. That is why you already see the budget come before. And this is classified, this is what? For security. So if we bring that relationship, that there is a very huge relationship between these two, then also communities, sometimes I get disappointed by what we demand our leaders to do for us. You see, one of the areas you can get victory here is through politics. If your leaders know that for you what you're demanding as a community is ensuring that children are in school, what government is giving for universal primary education, the budget will be increased. Because if everyone goes to their constituency and they tell them, look at what's happening in our schools, these people like votes like nothing, they would push for that. But when you see a term, a child getting about less than 5,000, every child in school, a term, less than 5,000 per child. I don't want to mention the exact figure, but less than 5,000. That is what government is giving one child in UPE. How much can that do? So if we can increase funding and monitoring in these schools, that the child of the poorest among the poor will go to a school and find education, I think that will work. Let's put them on pressure. This is what we want. But these issues of, there is nothing. Are you going to take this?
But
Yes,
you know,
Felix.
for me, honestly and truly, just to put an addendum to what Bob did say, you know, one of the worst things that happens to a third world country is politics. That's the worst thing that can happen to a third world country. And to make matters worse, if you have what we call bastardized politics, like we do have in this country. There's a story about one particular person, I think that's now the minister, something like Jesse Muyengo, I don't know, whatever he is. I think he was thrown out of parliament, and in his own constituency, it is said that he used to sponsor over 500. But do you know what the electorate said? They said, like, you get out, I think, whatever, but also me, like that kind of attitude. Why I say that is that the would-be messiahs in the faces of politics are the worst pretenders in terms of the problems of Ugandans. I want to have, you see, third world countries, we suffer so much from absence of sense. And that's why many people make such mistakes. Like, we don't concentrate on the things that build a nation together, but we always focus on everything that builds individuals. Now, we can never have a right-standing education with that mentality. Because in third world countries, people fight for individual growth. As long as I'm a member of parliament, like that's why you see people fighting for spaces. I want to be speaker, I want to be this, I want to be... No one will bring something in terms of national commonality and interest. Education is one of the things that can push... I've heard people talking about middle income status, whatever. You cannot reach those places when you don't have a population that solves their problems. That's one of the... Well, I don't know what is Nyingo in English, Robert. The ones who went to the Pampers High School, those schools. They call it...
One of the pillars...
Like it is what, okay, let's call it, it is one of the pillars of socio-economic growth is having solutions for your problems.
Yes.
But if you think, and put it at a family setting, if you think every time you have a problem, you're going to run to neighbor Robert, you cease to have growth. You must create solutions for your problems. The only way to do that in this country is gear up education. Make it sensible, make it approachable, accessible, like let everyone afford. But away from that, we are going to become, you see, do you know something called cartels?
Yes.
Have you heard of
very dangerous
drug lords?
Yes.
Very
I
dangerous.
gave examples of countries like Uruguay, the Colombias, the Mexicos. Do you know how they started? Like this one. Like this one. And you will see. 10, 15 years from now, you're going to have some of the worst gangs. You go to South Africa, you in Gauteng.
Yes.
For some of you, I've been to some of those states in Gauteng. You'll be shocked. There are hours you can't drive past. There are places even police will tell you, in KwaZulu.
And they
Natal,
made it a bit official.
You don't go there.
It's part of the illegal.
So far we call them dangerous sports. Please avoid this. It is a dangerous
we shall
sport.
get to that if
But
we
also, we have one of our viewers. It is his birthday today. It is his birthday, and I feel just remind you that he's been with us throughout, and that is Chibidige Bob Kins. He's the CEO of Chiboga Media. So it is his big day today, and we want to celebrate his day with him, and of course wish him a lovely, happy birthday.
Well, we're still talking about worrying cases of school dropouts in Uganda. How do we put a halt to that endemic? Well, do let us know. Get onto our socials, #UBCGMU on Twitter. And, you can always file your solution. You never know, it could be the magic solution to end this problem. We're going in for the break. When we get back, the big stories in our papers.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
I remember the lockdown. when the streets were empty and our lives disrupted, when businesses closed and our livelihoods hung in the balance. Hospitals were full. We lost loved ones, jobs, and hope. Our children couldn't study anymore. We cannot let this happen again. We should not go back. Get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and join the millions of Ugandans who are already vaccinated.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello? Hello? This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.
Campus? Really?
Hey, you don't remember me?
Okay, so how can I help you?
I'm stuck in Gulu making millions and I need to urgently send money to my sick mother. But I can't find any mobile money agent near me. I've sent the money to your phone, as you can see the message. It might take a few minutes to come through, but I urgently need you to send the money to my mother. Let me send you her number and you send it to her chap.
My friend, I'm afraid your mom is going to die.
What?
Because I don't know you, I never went to campus, and I'm also in Gulu. So can we meet at CPS, we talk about it?
Stay tuned for what Kasozi does next.
Tofera, refrain from unnecessary engagement with strangers over the phone. This message is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Welcome to the press review, and we start off with the Daily Monitor. This morning, the big, of course, story being court sets new rule on loan interest pay. And of course, this is in the matters of interest, where the court has ruled that it is illegal for unlicensed money lenders to charge interest on a loan. And of course, this is setting the stage for a bruising battle between liquid lenders who enter loose agreements with borrowers. Now, the next time your money lender who is not fully registered and licensed decides to impose an interest on you, well, I must say that it is illegal and you need to call them out. Ebola-related deaths shoot to 21. This is according to the Health Ministry. And of course, we're looking at pictures, or a picture over there showing some medics and the Health Minister, Dr. Jane Ruth Acheng, leading a prayer with health teams at Mubende Hospital shortly after inspecting the Ebola isolation facilities. This happened over the weekend. Now, in more news, Buganda reads mischief into debates on land reforms in the panorama section. You can pick that story. And on the regional level, we look at Facebook. We look at Gulu City School eyes 960 million Uganda shillings in global competition, and Entebbe Rotary president dies. Well, in more news, government bans steel timber construction method. More examiners to mark this year's primary leaving examinations. And on the business realm, Facebook given ultimatum on tax. Now, you can get yourself the Daily Monitor this morning to catch up on those stories. Well, on the second page, there is a more detailed story about the Ebola deaths shooting up to 21. And today in history, first Karamoja District Farm Institute opened, and Kennedy and Nixon square off in first televised the presidential debates. Well, get yourself the Daily Monitor this morning.
And at the same time, you can also get a copy of the New Vision, giving you details as they emerge on the South Sudan trafficked babies. That's a story on page 8 of the New Vision. But also they give you a big headline right there. Public universities funding to change. Institutions are to be funded according to research and enrollment. Details are on page 3. They also give you a beautiful picture right there as Buganda region wins Miss Tourism. That is Sydney Nabulia Kavuma 20, who is in the center right there from Buganda region, as she was crowned Miss Tourism during the finale on Friday at Canberra Arena. Now also in the New Vision, experts call for tracing of contacts. That is on Ebola. Details are on page 5. But also IGG recovers shillings 2 billion from the OPM officials. Details are on page 4. And in family, Uganda paying huge price for teenage pregnancy. That's a story on page 10. Now crossing over to the second page, government supports sweet potato farmers, as sweet potato farmers will soon realize the value of money for their efforts following the launch of the sweet potato value chain development projects. They give you some of the pictures right there during one of the harvest money shows for the potato farmers. Today in history is September 26th, 2011. Fake HIV drugs were on sale. The National Drug Authority warned the public. And of course, more of that when you get yourself a copy of the New Vision.
And in the Daily Monitor Sports, Naziri lifts the Queens. Well, we're looking at, of course, the Women's Super League. The weekend results are also put out there for you. And England first Germany test. UCU She Afro optimistic after wins in Netball League. Now we're also looking at the Berlin Marathon. Kipchoge breaks own records. Kenyan great Eliud Kipchoge shatters his own marathon world record in Berlin. Namulonge School stars at Inter-Schools Golf Championships, and there is a classification laid out for you over there. So these and many other sports stories in the Daily Monitor this morning.
And in the New Vision Sport, they also give you more stories on the 60 sign-up as Ndeje University dreams of upgrading their sports complex to international standards ahead of the East African University Games in December. Follow through, give you some of the pictures right there as, you know, the league gears up. But also Chiplangat gears up for New Delhi, that is fresh from winning the marathon gold at the 2022 Birmingham Commonwealth Games. Uganda's victor, that is Kiplangat, is now shifting her guns to look at the New Delhi half marathon that is slated for October 16th, 2022. Of course, there is a lot on how many records she has broken, what she could be looking at, all that in the New Vision Sport, but also Uganda overall Fiasa champs. They give you some of the details in there as you look at the sports stories.
Switching to Daily Nation, Health Watch, Ebola next door. Of course, seeing that we already have an outbreak in Uganda, there is quite a warning of a call of caution, and also warnings are happening over there where they're looking at more than 5 days since the declaration of Ebola in Uganda. Kenyan officials continue to drag their feet with minimal screening at the Busia and Malaba border posts, even as the deadly virus spreads from the Mubende ground zero into Kampala, and claims of 20 victims and counting. Well, in also the environment news, Gachagua Shamba system plan sparks controversy. And in this education sector, now publishes back Ruto proposal to review CBC. And also looking at insecurity, when will it stop? 8 officers killed by bandits. Clearly, insecurity is quite a problem that he's being first on the block. Record breaker, and they're looking at quite a story. They're telling a story about this man, Kipchoge, who did break his own record when it comes to the marathon and the championships that are happening in Berlin. They're giving you more on that and much, much more. So grab yourself the Daily Nation, the Daily Monitor, and the New Vision to catch up on those stories and many, many more. But also one thing you ought to look out for is for the traffic updates. Today is Monday, and I must say the roads are quite busy from what is being shown on our maps this morning. And the areas around Kampala Central, of course, I must say that the traffic keeps building in from all the city outskirts into the main area. But today I want to focus on areas coming in from Chitakule, Balintuma, Hoima Road, as you're headed towards Apollo Kagwa Road, and of course connecting all the way through Wandegea, the areas around Makere, as you're heading towards a town. Starting off with Namirembe, I must say that Namirembe Road is actually quite also busy this morning, and the traffic is very evident because the roads are all dotted with all these red spots over here. So that shows you that the traffic has already built up in that very specific part. Looking at Hoima Road this morning, I must say that it is quite one of the busiest roads I have seen. In a while, we do see the red stretches taking over for the most parts of the road, and we are seeing transitions from red into maroon, showing you that as you go further, the traffic becomes heavier by the minute. So you need to also plan accordingly. Now, this is a road also you could use to join Chadondo Road. The Chadondo Road, on the other hand, we do have some traffic building up over here as you're trying to connect to Sir Apollo Kagwa Road. Now, Sir Apollo Kagwa Road is quite busy from this this specific direction, as we're seeing the reds coming in from Salo Road, showing you that there are very many people trying to join in here at Old Kampala Police Station. We also do have the Gaddafi Road here, showing you that the traffic in this very specific spot is already heavy as it is. But for the most part of Sir Apollo Kagwa, as you're joining Makere Hill Road, well, I could say the traffic is also building up. So this is a hiccup you will be facing as you're trying to join this road. Makerere Hill Road, we do have traffic also over there that has already become heavy as we speak right now, and as you're headed towards Wandegea Market, you should be expecting it. It shouldn't come as a surprise. Looking at Gaddafi Road, which is also another road that will help you join Makere Hill Road, it is already heavy with the traffic over here. It's quite evidence. This is proof that people are already busy on the road this morning. So if you are if you haven't left your home and this is your daily route, well, I must say that you're in for quite a very heavy and busy traffic morning. This specific Monday. Well, as you're getting in to Wandegea is already quite busy. We already have cars that are making movements from one place to another. Now, as you're trying to get onto into Kampala using this other route, I must say that it's a bit quite easy for you to navigate, but like I already said, the traffic always changes every minute. Now, as you go ahead further onto Bombo Road, the traffic already showing that it's quite building up. The orange stretch on this road show you that, so you need to plan accordingly as you are headed to your destination. Now, also using Buganda Road as you're coming from town, which is a one-way route, it's actually quite it's a traffic-free road for this very specific hour, and the arrows clearly showing you that it is easy for you to navigate. The green is quite dominant on this road, so yes, you could use that if you're heading out of town and headed towards Wandegea. And for the rest of this part of the road, which is Kampala Road, I must say it's quite busy if you're headed towards town. Coming in, we are seeing traffic starting to build up on these very specific parts of the road. Well, that's it from the traffic updates this morning. If you're coming in from that part of town, well, you need to plan accordingly your journey. I will now leave you to Mollen to give you more weather updates and what's happening when it comes to the climate news. I shall be updating you. I am Philomena, Mastiko.
Well, thank you very much, Philomena, and of course for those traffic updates. Now, looking into weather, recently we have been talking about more of the rains across most areas within Kampala, and of course outside of Kampala we've seen more rains coming up, especially for Western Uganda, and most of those have been accompanied by hailstorms. And of course it begs a question of wondering why the frequency is getting, you know, more and more, especially in terms of extreme events, but also what is to do with the intensity at which which we're receiving these rains. Yes, we know that it is a rainy season, and most of these rains were highly anticipated actually. But again, what brings in the challenge is the fact that they are now associated with extreme weather events, and that cannot be good, especially also if it is bringing in a little bit of flooding towards the city center. That could actually interrupt business. But also outside of Uganda, we've seen more extreme weather events, and one of those is the tropical cyclone that has come up across Philippines. We're talking about a typhoon called Noru. Now, we do know that this has been, it made landfall yesterday, and of course after this we did see a lot of the after effects. It was associated with very strong winds, and of course the flooding that was headed towards Manila. Now, Manila is one of the areas that have been highly affected by this typhoon, and of course we do know that Philippines is no stranger to most of these tropical cyclones. And what is begging a challenge right now, even from the scientists, is that the frequency at which this is happening. In just less than a month, there has been about 3 tropical storms hitting Philippines, and most of the effects coming through from Manila, and of course the areas that are on the coastal area of Philippines. And of course we do wonder why this keeps happening, because you look at the fact that most of these actually super typhoons develop for this time of the year. However, now it is not giving enough time to actually evacuate masses. What we did understand from yesterday, the reports were coming through, is that this typhoon was coming at a very super speed, intensifying, and it was very difficult to even make evacuations plans. And we do know that so far these are 3 of the super typhoons that have hit the Philippines in just less than a month. And the first was Henry, which was also associated with very strong winds, death over 10 people. And then there was also one that did hit earlier, 16th of September. That was Josie, which was also across Manila. And now we're looking at the typhoon Noru, which has been locally named as Karding, that has also been associated with strong winds, and has now, so far, we have confirmed 6 people that have died from this typhoon. And we do know that evacuations are now going on. However, it's also not certain how many people have still been trapped through the area, especially across Manila, in the after effects of this typhoon. But we do know that it caused a lot of flooding across several places, and a lot of villages are still underwater. And we do know that it did also affect the bridges, washing away one of the bridges within the outskirts of Manila. And of course that also did pose a lot of challenges, especially with property damage coming in of the area. Now, this is just after we also saw another hurricane in the category of tropical storms. That is Hurricane Fiona. We're reading a story this morning that was across most areas, especially within Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. Now, as if that's not enough, we also had another tropical storm hitting Canada, and of course that also did bring in a lot of the after effects with strong winds and flooding. Now, it seems like this is just a pattern that is moving across, especially with extreme weather events. And some of these, actually, the storms that are hitting right now are very strong, and of course they intensify in a very small period that is not even giving enough time for evacuations. Now, there is also one that did hit the Canary Island across that was across Canada, and so far what they are doing is they have also made evacuations plans with another expected storm to hit the area. They're urging tourists to actually, not move towards the area. And so far, we do know that they have cancelled flights going to Canary Islands due to the expected effects of this storm that is expected over the area. And of course, also the tourists that were already in place were evacuated. It looks like it's going to be quite a season with tropical storms, and of course looking at more of what comes with extreme weather events, right from the flooding to the tropical storms. And not to mention that even as we deal with that, there are other areas in the world that are dealing with drought scenarios or drought crisis. And I think one of those is across East Africa, that is Ethiopia and coastal Somalia. All these areas are still dealing with extreme drought crisis. That is also an effect of all these climate variations that have brought in prolonged drought cases, and of course with most of these events that also continue to happen across the country. Well, we'll continue to also look at what is happening across the country, and of course we'll be tapping in from the weather forecast that we had this morning coming in from Uganda National Meteorological Authority to look at mainly what we expect for today across several places, and of course within the numbers. But this morning we did start off with mostly in terms of sunny and cloudy conditions. It looks like that will be across several places. Now as we look into the forecast, you also look into the numbers that are expected for this morning, especially across the western sector, starting off with quite some pleasant weather, but also we do expect rain starting off with the Mount Elgon Highlands across Mbale, Bududa, Buko and Sironko. We're forecasting those light rains starting off with a chilly 24 degrees. Now also southwestern Uganda, that is Fumbara, Ibanda, Bushenyi and Rubizi, we are forecasting sunny intervals. We will be starting off with a pleasant morning at 26 degrees centigrade, and we do expect similar weather later in the afternoon as well. Across the eastern parts of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Tororo, Busia, Iganga and Jinja, we're forecasting intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions, also starting off quite warm at 26 degrees. Now we look at the eastern side of Central, that is where we have Ruwero, Woblenzi, Bururi and Nakaseke. We're forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine, starting off quite warm at 26, but we do expect rainy conditions to develop later in the afternoon across that area. Now for areas of Soroti, Katakuya, Muria and Kumi, we're forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine. Also it looks like it's starting off quite hot at 27 degrees centigrade, and we do expect warmer weather later in the afternoon, continuing with those sunny intervals for eastern Uganda. Now the central part of northern Uganda, Gulu, Kitgum, Adjumani and Padel, we're also starting off with quite a mix of clouds and sunshine. It looks like it is quite a warm morning as well at 27, but we do see clouds that are going to be developing later in the afternoon. That means we could be having rains over there. The central part of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Mokono, Kampala, we have Entebbe, Wakiso. We're forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine, already starting off with quite a sunny day. Temperatures are quite chilly at 25, but we do expect a little bit of warming later in the afternoon for that area. Now it looks like even as we speak right now, according to the satellites, we still have that rainy system that continues to develop across the northwestern part of the country. That is already bringing in rains across areas of Arua, from those blue colors right there and orange over the map. That is showing the rainy system that is over the northwestern part of the country right as we speak. We do have a few clouds that are starting to develop. That is across the central parts of northern Uganda, but that is only bringing in a little bit of cloudy weather, and most of that will be clearing for a sunny morning. Also those clouds starting to develop across midwestern Uganda. Masindi right now as we speak with mostly cloudy weather, a few of the rains, but it also looks like that is starting to clear up, mostly as that system is headed westwards towards areas of Congo. But otherwise the rest of the country seems to be having mostly intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. Quite a pleasant morning, I should say, and of course it brings in a relief from those weekend rains that we were having across several places. But again in the afternoon we do expect some of those rains to come back, especially across the western sector and mostly within the southern region of the country. Well, that is it in terms of weather for this morning. Thank you very much for being here. And of course, we do have Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up. Later than that, we'll also be looking at mostly the sports highlights. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful Monday.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Simply make a small